Hello, and welcome to the Creative Mojo Podcast. This is episode number 39. My name is Joanne, and I am your host, as always, and I am coming to you from my home in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I'd like to give a warm welcome to all my returning viewers, and a big hello to anybody who might be new and checking out my podcast for the first time. I hope if this is your first time, that you'll enjoy it and consider liking the video and subscribing in the down bar below, and coming back and watching again. Today I am going to talk to you, as always, I already said as always, about my knitting. That's what I come here to do every episode I record. And I apologize, it's been almost 3 weeks, maybe even slightly longer than that, since I recorded last. I recorded in I'm just going to look at my notes. My last episode was August 26th. Today is September 23rd, so almost a month it's been since I recorded last. And I had intended to try to record sooner than this, but life's been crazy the last month. For those of you who might be new, I work in professional theater, and currently I work in an administrative capacity for a company, professional theater company here in Calgary, and I also do some stage management and working on productions and things like that, and I do some outside contracts as well. And the last 2 weeks before this one, I was working on an additional contract, so I was working in the office Monday to Friday, and then I was rehearsing in the evenings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and all day Saturday and Sunday. So I was working 7 days a week. I worked 14 days in a row without a day off. And a lot of those days were 12-hour days. So yeah, it was busy and intense, and that didn't give me either a lot of time for knitting or time to podcast, obviously. So I do have some things to show you. I've worked on, because it's been a month, I've worked on some things. I do have one finished object as well. But yeah, it was busy with that, and then this last week was a really intense week at work, and for various reasons. And so yeah, it's just been busy, intense, lots of working hours. And I do find sometimes, I don't know if you guys experience this as well, but when I get really busy like that, when I get home at the end of the day and I need to unwind a little bit, and I sort of plop down and watch maybe a little bit of television before I go to bed or read a book or something, and I can't even, sometimes I just can't even bring myself to knit. I don't even have, sometimes even on vanilla socks, I don't have the focus to knit if I'm that tired. So there were actually a few days where I didn't knit at all, which always feels weird to me, because generally I knit at least a little bit every day. But anyway, let's just jump right into it. The first thing I want to do is announce the prize winner for the Cal. I had a Cal running through the summer, Cookie A Socks Cal, and that ended at the end of August, but I hadn't had an opportunity since the end of August, obviously, as I was saying, to record. So this is a little late in coming, but it is coming nevertheless. I drew from the finished object thread for a prize winner, and that prize winner was entry number 6, who is Wheel's wife. That's Nancy. Wheel's wife, yes, that's Nancy from Moncton. Congratulations, Nancy. She knit a beautiful pair of no purl monkey socks. And Nancy, you have won this very lovely skein of yarn from, if I can get an accurate, yeah, that's actually a pretty accurate color of it, from Riverside Studio, which is a Canadian dyer. She's out of Ottawa, I believe. No, yeah, somewhere right around Ottawa. It says Wakefield, Quebec. So near, in the Ottawa kind of region. And this is her Superwash Merino Nylon Sock. It's a 3-ply 80/20. It's really soft and very bouncy. And the colorway is Sand. And I really love it. So I hope you will really love it. It's a good fall color. It's great for this time of year with this sort of creamy base, and then lots of little speckles of orange and brown. So I hope you will enjoy that. Please send me a message on Ravelry with your address, and I will get this in the mail to you as quickly as possible. Congratulations, and thanks to everyone who entered. I'm probably not going to do a Cal for a little bit now. I'm going to wait for the next one, I think, a little bit later into the fall, just because I've been busy and I need some new ideas. So I'm just going to think a little bit on what that next one might be. If you have an idea of a knit along that you be interested in doing and that you think might be fun for us to host in this group, we do have a group, by the way. I neglected to mention that. We have a group on Ravelry. It's called Creative Mojo, after the name of the podcast. And I highly encourage you, if you haven't done so, to come along and join that group and check things out there. That's where I post my show notes as well. So anyway, yes, if you do have an idea you could for a knit along that you think might be fun, you could pop it in the down bar below in the messages section here on YouTube, or post it in the episode thread on Ravelry. So let's just jump right into it and let me show you what I have been working on in my sort of limited knitting time in the last few weeks. My finished object is this lovely pair of socks. Yes, there are two. I knit these for my husband. I finished these a couple of weeks ago. Actually, they've been sitting in my knit basket waiting for me to show them off in the podcast, and he's been eyeing them because the weather has turned a little cooler. So I'm glad I can show them, and I can now give them to him and he can start wearing them. These were knit out of the card here, Black Trillium Fibers. This is some yarn I picked up in Portland about 2 years ago when I was touring around on the west coast of the US with my husband a bit, and we were visiting some friends in Portland, and I visited my friend Christine, who is a knitter as well. That I met her a couple of years ago at the Zombie Knit Apocalypse, and we had a beautiful day. We had a really, really nice day. Had lunch together, and she took me to a yarn store, and I bought a whole bunch of yarn. And this is one of the skeins I picked up. As I said, it's Black Trillium Fibers, and it's her Marilon sock, which is a 75-25 merino nylon, and this color, which was actually, I believe, only in the store Happy Knits where I bought it. I don't know if this is a color. I don't think this is a color she sells online anymore, but I'm not 100% sure, so you could check out her website for that. She's on an Etsy shop, I think. I'll put the link to that in my show notes. And this was a series of colorways she did based on the doctors from Doctor Who, and I actually picked up the 8th Doctor, 9th Doctor, 10th Doctor, and 11th Doctor, I think. And this is the 9th Doctor. And I just love this colorway with the blacks and the greens. I was rewatching some, actually, sorry, I just got distracted because I was thinking it was 9th Doctor, 10th Doctor, 11th Doctor, 12th Doctor, I do believe. Because this was the first new Doctor Who. If you don't watch the show, the show ran for it's a British show, and it ran for many years in the UK, and there were a series of different people who played the Doctor, and then they stopped making it, and then they started remaking it again about maybe 10, 12 years ago, something like that. Anyway, this is named after the first Doctor of the new set of series of Doctor Who, and I was rewatching some of that recently and noticing he wears a sort of black leather jacket, and in a lot of lights it kind of goes in this great way, as black leather often does, between black and sort of dark greens and stuff, as the lights reflect on it, and in scenes where it's raining and the leather's a little wet and all that kind of stuff. And this actually captures it really beautifully, all the sort of ways that leather changes color. And it's really a lovely yarn. I enjoyed knitting these socks so much. This is pretty standard for vanilla sock. For my husband, I think this one is actually 72 stitches. Often I do 68 for him, but I think I did 72 in this. And I do all my socks a magic loop from the top down, and a heel flap and gusset, and that's pretty much all I can say. I did the toe a little bit pointier than I sometimes do them a little bit wider across the top here, and I'm not sure why I did them so pointy, but they actually fit him really well. I generally have him try on at least the first sock as I go to, make sure that the length is right for him. Anyway, those are done. Now that I've shown them to you, I can give them to him, and I'm sure they will go on his feet in the next day or two, now that we're into later in September and cooler temperatures here. we actually had a bunch of quite cool temperatures last week or two, I guess. We had a lot of rain, and it was pretty chilly. It actually got down to almost pretty close to zero in Celsius for a couple of days, but it's warmed back up again. It's actually a beautiful day today. It's a sunny and in the high teens. I think it's about plus 15 or 16, which I think is around 60, 65, somewhere in that neighborhood Fahrenheit, I think. Don't quote me on that though. Anyway, it's beautiful and sunny and nice, and feels but feels crisp and fallish, and hence sweaters. I'm wearing my oh gosh, am I going to be Princess Fiona is the name of this pattern. You can't really see it, but it's one of my favorite sweaters I knit last year, I think. I knit it out of skein. Her merino silk blend. It's 50% merino and 50% silk. It's really comfy. It's a bit oversized. It's very drapey, but it's very cozy. I wear it quite often, and my only complaint has been, I don't know if you can see that, it does tend to pill a fair amount, and that's just the merino silk, the merino that Kristen uses in her yarns for Skein Yarn, which is an Australian company, are very fine. Are very soft. She uses beautiful whatever mill she gets her yarn from. It's beautiful, soft merino, but mixed in with the silk, as you can see here, it does pill pretty well. And I've taken the my gleaner to it a couple of times, and it still pills a bit, but I don't really mind that. Give me something to do to pick the pills off. Anyway, it's such a cozy sweater, and it's great to have this cooler temperatures in fall weather that makes you want to wear your hand knit sweaters and scarves and things. Anyway, so that's my finished object. I did also want to show you, on my last episode, I showed my Fairy Hill shawl, which was the first shawl from the Helen Stewart's Shawl Society Series 2, and that's a 6-month pattern club. That this is I kind of totally dropped the ball on that this year. This is the only one of the 6 patterns. I think the last pattern's already come out. All 6 patterns have been released. This is the only one I actually knit. I will get to them at some point, but this is the Fairy Hill. I did show you this as a finished object last time I recorded. But since then I have blocked it. It grew in a nice way. The size is great, especially if this is a 1 skein. I did a 1 skein version. I think the pattern had 1 or 2 skeins, but I did 1. But that lace opened up, as you can see, really beautifully with the blocking. And I was worried about the tightness of this edging, and the fact that it was really kind of making it curl, and that it was actually here creating a little bit of a hump. And I'm very pleased to report, which is sort of why I wanted to show it to you, it did actually block out pretty well. I put it under a fair amount of tension across this edge and tried to, I had to curve it a little bit to block it, but I tried to keep it reasonably straight, and it's not too bad. There's still a tiny little bit of that, but nothing like it was before I blocked it. So I'm very pleased with that. So yeah, I thought I would just show you what this looked like in its blocked form. This is actually going to go as a gift to a friend now that it's done and blocked and shown off and looks beautiful. I'm going to pass this on to my friend Jamie next time I see her. So those are 2 things that the socks are really, that's the thing I've finished since last we spoke. And then I have a couple of 2 new projects that I'm working on to show you, and one I think that I showed maybe a few episodes back. And I haven't worked much on most of the projects that I showed you in sort of the last 2 episodes. Most of those are still sitting, kind of neglected. I was working there for a while on some projects that been working on my, what's it called, my Birkin sweater, which is got a colorwork yoke, and it's 3-color colorwork. And as I was saying, with feeling really busy and having trouble finding even the sort of energy when I got home at night to knit at all, I was really not very interested in anything complicated. So I didn't do any work on any of those sort of complicated projects. Well, I did do a little bit more work on my Le Molieu, the squishy shawl, which is the Mina Phillips pattern. That's grown a tiny bit. I don't have it here to show you today because it maybe only added about that much to it. But I'm planning to take that with me. I'm headed out next weekend, next Friday, to Knit City in Vancouver. I think I talked about that on the last episode. And then after Knit City, my husband and I are going to spend about 5 days on Hornby Island, which is one of the Gulf Islands sort of between Vancouver and Victoria. And there are a bunch of beautiful little islands there. And people have gorgeous summer homes and stuff. And a friend of ours arranged for us to stay in a beautiful summer home out on Hornby. So we're going to go and hole up there and relax for a week. And about 5 days, I guess. And so I'm going to take the Le Milieu as one of the projects out there, and hopefully I'll get a serious amount done on that. Because I found, because that's a, oh gosh, I'm having my brain is, what do you call it, that fancy stitch? Why can't I think of what it's called? Brioche, there you go. It's a brioche pattern. Can't believe I couldn't think of that. And it and what I was finding was that when I set it down for too long, I sort of forget the rhythm of the brioche, and I have to really remember it all over again. So it takes me a little bit to, like when I said I added, maybe 2 or 3 more repeats. It's about 2 more repeats. It's about that much on the shawl since I showed it to you last. I really had to. The first repeat of it was. It's 12 rows, I think, in the repeat. And I really had to focus on remembering, not so much what the brioche stitch, the knit and purl stitch and brioche, I remember those just fine, but the order of how things were happening in the shawl, and whether some rows you're knitting the first stitch, and in some rows you're slipping the first stitch, and in some rows you're knitting to the end and then sliding back along the needle, and other rows you're actually turning the work. So yeah, I realized I can't, if I leave that for very long, then it takes me a really long time to get back into it. So I thought, well, it'd be a good project to take away for a quiet week of hanging out on Hornby Island, and hopefully lots of good knitting time, and really focus on that. So anyway, what have I been working on? Let me show you. The first thing this is the project that I think I showed you back. If I look back in my notes, I believe I showed this to you 2 or 3 episodes ago, maybe. It's just a pair of vanilla socks. I think I started them June or July, maybe July. I finished the first one. These are knit. I'm really enjoying this yarn as well. This is some Unwind Yarn Company. The colorway is Feria de Valencia. If you can see that. And I got this in a yarn swap at the Zombie Knit Apocalypse again about 3 years ago. They have a thing they do where everybody brings a skein of yarn they have that they are not as keen on for whatever reason, and it all just goes into a great big pile on the floor, and everyone draws a number, and then in order of numbers you get to go and pick whatever you would like a skein of yarn out of the pile. If you've put one in, you can take one out, and so it's awesome if you're in the first 20 numbers or so. You have really, really great choice of all different kinds of yarn, and people bring all kinds of things. And I was excited to see this ball of yarn or this skein of yarn in there, because I've never knit with Unwind Yarn, and this is a really lovely yarn. It's an 80/20 superwash merino and nylon, 400 yards. It's a nice, very soft, squishy yarn, beautiful colors. And as you can see, it's sort of swirly striping up. It's not actually self-striping, obviously, it's variegated, but it did a little pooling here where the stitch count gets greater for the gusset. I don't mind that at all. So that's sock number 1, and I'm almost done sock number 2. I just need to put a toe on this second sock. I think I'm right at where I need to start the toe decreases. So this is a 64 stitch sock, and it's on a 2.25 millimeter needle. These are the needles I use most of the time. These are my favorites. They're the Dreams needles from Knitter's Pride, I think. And I just love these needles. I know everybody has their own, which is great. Everybody has their own favorite needles and stuff. I love Magic Loop for socks. It's all I knit socks on anymore. And I love these wooden needles. I have an interchangeable set, and I have lots of sock needles and stuff. And I actually like, some people find that they drag a little too much. I actually like that little bit of drag. So yeah, these are my preferred sock needles. And these have been, recently I've been able to put quite a bit. I think a couple of days ago I was only about here on this sock. So I've kind of zoomed through the last part of the leg and the heel turn. But these have basically been purse knitting and waiting room knitting and bust knitting, that kind of thing. So that's why they've taken so long. They've been just what I've had in my purse and picked up from time to time when I'm on the bus or waiting at the doctor's office or something. I did a tiny bit of knitting on these when I was in rehearsals those last 2 weeks, but only a tiny bit. So those are coming along. I suspect I will finish. I think I will probably finish. I might even just finish those tonight. I might just whip off that toe and get those done, because I'd like to cast on a new pair of vanilla socks also to take with me on my trip. I think generally vanilla socks are a good thing for knitting, will be a good thing for knitting at Knit City, that you can knit when you're hanging out with people or in a restaurant or bar or whatever I might be doing. And I hope I'm going to be hanging out with people. I always get trepidatious. I'm going by myself, but I do know people that are going to be there. And so I'm hoping some of them will want to hang out with me. And there is somebody who reached out to me when I talked about this in the last episode, a viewer, and mentioned she was going to be there. So I'm hoping to meet up with her. And terrible, I can't remember her name right now, but you know who you are. I look forward to getting together with you, hopefully. Anyway, so there's that pair of vanilla socks. And then I also have my month of October socks that I'm working on for. These are the socks that I'll enter in the Grocery Girls sock bash for the month of, not October, sorry, September. And these are a really fun pattern. I've been knitting the, it's the Clark Socks pattern by Jacqueline Salem, who's the host of the Brooklyn Knit Folk podcast. And you may have seen these on Instagram or Ravelry. This is her first ever, I think, pattern. And it's really fun to knit. The first sock is done. This is sock number 1. And I am almost done, about 3/4 of the way down, I think, the leg of the second sock. So that's how far I am, I think. Yeah, I think I have about that much more of the leg on the second sock, and then I'm ready for the heel. Mostly I have knit these 2 pattern. I made 2 little alterations. She calls for a short row heel, and I actually put a heel flap and gusset. And the reason why I decided to do that was primarily that this is a 64 stitch pattern, and and I'm knitting it on a 2.25 millimeter. I think she maybe calls for 2.5 millimeter pattern, but I often find 2.5 these days feel a little too loose for me. I like my socks to have a fairly firm material. So I went with 2.25, and it's 64 stitches, and cables draw stuff in, especially this beautiful sort of elaborate cable. And I was worried that they were going to be a little tight. They're not. They actually are beautifully snug. They fit really well, but I do have a bit of a high arch, and so I was a bit worried that with that 64 stitch count and the cable that draws them in and stuff, that just a short row heel might not have enough arch room. And I know that a heel flap and gusset is better for that, so I just swapped it out and did a heel flap and gusset on it. And the other change I did was a little bit of change from how she describes the top, how you end off the pattern here. I kind of liked the way the pattern ended on a different row than what she mentioned. And I just put a few rows in there of purl stitches across the top that match the column of purl stitches down here. So yeah, this cable is just lovely. It's a really beautiful cable, if you can see that. And it's fun to knit, and it's easier than it looks, and I kind of want to put it on everything now because it's a cool cable. And then it's got this very simple 2x2 cable up the back of the leg. And the other clever thing she's done is down the leg and the foot, there's just these like little slanted purl rows. So I don't want to give away too much on the pattern, of course, but basically you do, there are 8 stitches here, and this is an 8 stitch cable repeat. So it's a fantastic way to know where you are in the pattern without having to follow the pattern all the time. Because if the purl stitch is on the first row, you're on row 1. And if the purl stitch is on the second stitch, you're on row 2, that sort of thing. So it makes it really, really easy to know where you are in the pattern. It makes it really easy to count how many repeats you've done. And as I said, it made it so that I didn't have to carry the pattern around all the time and look at the pattern. It's super easy to memorize and do without the pattern. So when I had time to work on these flew by pretty quickly, and I'm just focusing on trying to get them done in the next couple of days before I go away so that I can have them entered for the end of September. So yes, that's the Clark Socks by Jacqueline Salem. I highly recommend that pattern. I feel like I might even knit it again. And the last thing that I've been working on a bit is I cast on yet another sweater. Crazy me. I don't know why. I just it's something. This is something that had been kind of parked in the back of my head for a while. It's something I knew I wanted to work on at some point, and just one day I was like, today's the day. So I have cast on the Penguono by Stephen West, and it's a really fun pattern. I'll show you what I've got on it. I haven't knit on it for about the last week, so it's been, but I knit on it quite a bit for about a week after I recorded last, and I got quite a lot done. It's a very quick pattern for the most part. These welts are a little slower. All the rest of it really sort of flies by. So that's the back, as you can see. And these stitches that are on hold up here will be the back neck. Then you do these welts on either side. So I've got the welts done and the next sort of panel after that here. And then you go and you start, I'm just about to put in the first welt on this side. Just try to make sure my needle doesn't come out. I'm knitting these on a, I think I'm on a size 6.5 millimeter. I can't quite remember now. I think I'm on a 6.5 millimeter needle. And these are my interchangeables that I was just talking about that are the same Dreams by Knitter's Pride, Knitter's Pride. And so if you're not familiar with the Penguin, it's a sort of oversized boxy jacket kind of sweater. There's no buttons or anything up the front. It's just, it's kind of kimono style is really, I think, how he describes it. And it is kind of kimono style. But, and it's knit as many of Stephen West's patterns are. If you've knit, I've knit several of his shawl patterns in the past. This is the first garment of his. It's knit with where you do all these different sort of bits that you add on, and then you pick up stitches and you add on another piece. That's very common in a lot of his patterns. So this back panel is done in seed stitch or moss stitch. Knit one, purl one, and then do the opposite on the next row. And then there's garter stitch. I think most of it is either seed stitch or garter stitch, although these welts are stockinette. And he did it, and it's very patchworky, right? Different colors and different spots and stuff. And he gives you kind of a recipe for different sizes. The sizes are sort of based on the gauge you're getting. I did a gauge swatch. I hope that I am getting it may not be quite as oversized on me as it might be on some people, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm a fairly large woman, so I don't necessarily always really like things that are super oversized on me, because then it makes me look even bigger. So, but I also don't like things that are super tight fitting. So I try to find the happy medium of things that are in that middle range, right? And I think this is going to fit pretty well. And as I said, so he gives you sort of a recipe of different gauges and needle sizes and stuff for making different sizes of the sweater. And it's based on holding different yarns together, or you could do it, you could just use one yarn, I guess, and use like a bulky weight yarn or worsted weight or whatever. I decided to do it. I'm doing it predominantly. This is yarns from my stash. I did have to pick up one thing on it, but I have a whole bunch of this. It's Madeline Tosh Pashmina in the fawn colorway, and I had a whole bunch of it because I actually knit a sweater out of this about 3 years ago. And I finished the whole sweater actually, and it didn't fit well, and I didn't like it. The style of it wasn't really right for me, for my body type, and I was still sort of learning about myself in sweaters more. So I finished the sweater. I hadn't woven in the ends or blocked or anything like that. But I put it on and went, oh, I'm not happy with this. And the sleeves were too long and stuff like that. So I actually eventually, I think I talked about this on an early episode of the podcast. I pulled out the whole sweater, and I can't remember if I did that before I started podcasting or not. Anyway, I pulled out the whole sweater and reclaimed the yarn. I like rewound it all, washed it, and hung it to dry to take the kink out of the kink that was in it from knitting it. And I had been knitting on that sweater for about 6 months, so it had lots of kink in it. And then reskeined it all up. And I thought, well, I have tons of this. And so this is the base color I'm using. I'm holding this all the way through the sweater. So every section has one strand of this pashmina in the fawn color. And then I'm mixing that with other colors out of my stash. Some of them, a lot of them are yarns that I was using in the the Find My Fade shawl that I pulled out. And I had a bunch of hedgehog fiber left over from that, or yarns that I hadn't even put into that shawl yet, but that I was planning to. So in the back, for example, I held... And then I'm also holding a strand of mohair with each section. So for the back section, I was doing a strand of this plus this hedgehog fiber, which I can't remember the colorway name of right now. And it's blowing out a bit on the camera, sorry. But I was holding those together, plus I was holding this mohair. So this is what gives it this sort of, I don't know if I hold it close enough, maybe you can see the sort of fuzz from the mohair, which is really fun, and it feels actually really soft. All the mohair is mohair silk blend, and of course the pashmina is a merino silk cashmere. So it's very soft and very lovely and squishy, and it should be very cozy. And because of the design of it, it's meant to be something to wear over top of another shirt, a t-shirt or whatever. So it's, other than maybe at the ends of the arm, although it's not meant to come all the way down either. It comes to about your elbows. So most of it will not be direct against skin, because sometimes mohair, even with all that silk, there can be a tiny bit itchy, but I'm not worried about that at all. So that's what gives it that lovely kind of pink glow to a large degree, is that mohair. And then for the next section, for these welts, I held the pashmina with, this is another skein of hedgehog fiber in the monarch colorway, and I held it with this very bright mohair that I had. Some of these mohairs, several of these mohairs were in my stash already as well, and I did go and pick up a couple of other colors of mohair to complete this, but first I gathered everything I had in my stash, and I went, oh, I want another couple of other colors, so I did that. But this was already in my stash. I don't even remember what brand that one is. This, gosh, I can't remember the brand name of that either. Do I? I probably have, yes, I do have the tag. That one's Alchemy Yarns. And this beautiful, beautiful hot orange, which is called, is there a colorway name? Candy Tuft. Perfect. And so yeah, that's what gave this lovely with the orange. Again, you can kind of, if I hold it that way in front of my glasses, you can see the fuzz there. And then this section here, which looks much more like it's predominantly this color, but it's actually a mix there of that color, plus I used some yarn ink from a pair of socks I knit earlier, and I held that with this mohair. So yeah, I'm having fun playing with that. I'm gonna do I'm going to use this in some, which is pistachio, which is other hedgehog. I've also got a bright yellow, I think it's banana legs, that I'm going to use, I think, for the, you end up with an I-cord bind off all the way around, and I might use that for the I-cord bind off and hold it with a very bright green, bright it's a bright lime green, I guess is what I'd probably call it in a mohair. So I don't have all my yarns and colors up here with me because I'll show you this bag is pretty full with what I do have. So anyway, I'm having great fun with this. I got stalled off a little bit on it when I got so busy that I wasn't really knitting at all, and I have my other sweaters, so I don't know which one I'll get back to next, but I'm at the place where I'm ready to do the welt here, and those are just a little more complicated, and I was like, one evening, I was like, oh, I'm too tired to do the welt. So this has been sitting since then. So I just have to get through the welts because the rest of it all just zooms because it's pick up some stitches and do garter stitch, right? Anyway, yeah, as I said, this is all living in this bag. I'll show you if you haven't seen the penguino. So this is the sort of basic shape that it is when it's done. And there's a great picture here of how you knit it in the pieces. If I can find that one. Yeah, here. So you can see it's all knit in, so I've knit this bit and that one, and it tells you and it numbers the orders that you're knitting them in. And then you just sort of join it all up together and add on a band, a front band, and a collar band, and sleeves, and away you go. So, but yeah, it's all been in this great big bag, which is one of my fantastic, much loved Fat Squirrel sweater bags. And yeah, that's that. So those are the projects that I have worked on since I've spoken with you last. And that pretty much is everything I have to talk to you about today. This is going to be a slightly shorter podcast than usual, I think, which is good. I do have one acquisition that I'm going to show you. It's the only thing I've picked up. The only time I've been to a yarn store since I spoke with you last was I went to pick up a couple of those balls of additional mohair at Stash, which is one of my favorite local yarn stores. And while I was in there, I got this, which I love hard. This has been sitting here on my dining room table for a couple of weeks, and I just keep picking it up. And this is Olan yarn from Ireland. And dyed in Ireland, and they started carrying this, and I was so excited to see it. It's tweed, if you can tell, which I love. Tweed yarns, love. And I just love all the colors of this. So it's a basic neutral, although I think because there's black in here, it's sort of gone almost to a gray. It's like a very pale gray. And then there's the purple, there's some hot pink, there's some orangey red, sort of, yeah, bright, like a real orangey red. There's black, there's a paler purple and darker purple. It's just gorgeous. It's just absolutely gorgeous. So I may wind this and use this as the vanilla socks that I knit on next, I think, because I love it. I'm always trapped in that place where it's like I want to wind it and I want to knit something beautiful with it, but at the same time, once I knit it, I won't have it anymore to contemplate knitting because it's the only one I've got. Although I think now that they're carrying these, hopefully, now that they're carrying Olan yarns, hopefully that won't be the only time they get them in the shop. So I probably have a decent chance of getting my hands on it again. I mean, I could order it from her shop online, but a little cheaper without the shipping, right? Although this was not the cheapest yarn. Actually, it's not too bad. And the color, I believe, is, I'm not even going to attempt to say it. It's probably a Gaelic word. Cluain, maybe? C-L-U-A-I-N. Cluain, I think. And it's her Donegal sock, which is 80% superwash merino and 20% Donegal nep. Yeah, Cluain. Cluain. But anyway, I love this, so I'll let you see it when I'm knitting it up. So, looking down at my show notes, I think that's everything I wanted to talk with you about today. I will definitely be back with you in 2 weeks' time. Not this next weekend, obviously, because I'll be in Knit City. Oh, see, here I am already lying again. Perhaps I'll record an episode. It won't quite be 2 weeks before I could upload it, but I will record an episode while we are out on Hornby Island. So, assuming that I have some some place to do that, but I imagine I will. I imagine that there's going to be a nice place to do that. So I will try and record an episode while I'm out on Hornby, talk a little bit what I'm working on there, and probably show you what I bought at Knit City. And then I will upload that right after I come back, which will be early October. We're coming back, I think, on the 8th or the 9th of October, so it will be uploaded shortly after that. So there you go. So 2 weeks and change till my next episode. So anyway, that's everything for today. Again, thank you for choosing to spend a little time with me. I hope you're all well. I hope most of you have not been quite as crazy busy as I've been. I hope you're enjoying some nice fall weather. And I know different parts of North America, it's been unseasonably warm for September. But I'm hoping if it's still warm where you are, that it's going to cool off a little bit and you're going to be able to enjoy putting on some fall knitwear. That I know that's always an exciting time for all of us. So until I talk to you again, happy knitting.